There's a quote from a book called Invisible Women. It's actually a book on my to-read list, and I feel like this quote perfectly sums up everything that I want to touch on today. The quote is from the author Caroline Criado Perez, and it says, "The fact is that worth is a matter of opinion, and opinion is informed by culture. And if that culture is as male-biased as ours is, it can't help but be biased against women by default." Welcome back to another Coffee Talk. I'm Kalyn. I like to host these deep conversations like you're chatting with a friend over coffee. Today in particular, I really want to talk about the invisible load on both women and mothers, or obviously women who are mothers. So if you fit into any of those categories, then you might feel a bit seen, or I hope you feel seen or heard from today's conversation. However, what I don't want to do, especially just because of the quote that I'm starting today's talk with, is make this seem like it's a hate on men or anything. That's not my intention with today's conversation. To be honest, I don't have all of the answers. I don't have the perfect things to say, really. I'm just going to be giving my opinion and my experience of the own invisible pressures and the invisible load that I feel and that I carry, and that I know from speaking to other mothers and other women that they carry it too in their own ways and in their own perspectives. And just let it be seen and let it be heard and let it be talked about. Because I feel like one of the biggest threats, I don't know, maybe that's too dramatic of a word, are the ones that we don't talk about. They're the ones that are felt but never spoken of. And so I just want to talk about it today. This was actually a conversation that got requested after I had filmed. It was a bonus vlog, so it was for my membership base, and I am planning on doing one actually publicly as well in a couple weeks' time. But I created this new housekeeping list, right? And this housekeeping schedule. And I shared it, and it struck up a conversation amongst a couple of the members of my community where we were talking about just how much women take on at home, even if they are high earners in their household, how to balance out domestic duties at home, or just the invisible load that not just mothers carry. I want to talk about how women carry this invisible load too. So there's going to be a lot to say today, and I'm going to do my best to organize my thoughts so that it can be a well-held conversation. At least I hope so. Over the years, I have dabbled into so many different ventures online, and Shopify has been there with me every single step of the way. From when I used to sell mugs and sweaters to now selling things like books and possibly journals. Right now, you can sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/KCTalk. That's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/KCTalk now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. One more time, that is shopify.com/KCTalk. My closet used to be entirely chaotic, crammed with a bunch of clothes, but still feeling like I had nothing to wear. Now my wardrobe is growing with more luxury essentials that transition from one season or one occasion to the next, and I can do so staying on budget. Indulge in some affordable luxury. Head to quince.com/talk for free shipping on your order, and you can get 365-day returns. That is QUINCE.com/TALK to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Again, that's quince.com/talk. As both a woman and a mother, I've experienced firsthand what it's like to carry this invisible weight. And I think it's even more interesting that for a long time, I didn't really even notice the weight that I was carrying. It really did take stepping into motherhood for me to really fully observe it and become aware of it, and then not necessarily question it, but just get curious about it and start to push my own inner beliefs, my own inner boundaries, my own inner assumptions about what is meant to be mine in terms of responsibility, what I'm meant to be like as I show up in the world, and where these ideas and these concepts really even came from, whether it is as I'm showing up as a mom or if I'm showing up as just a person, just a woman in the world, and like presenting myself in any kind of way. So what do I even mean when I say invisible load? Maybe you've heard that term before. I actually heard it first from my sister when her and I were discussing, just like, you know, when you sit down like we are doing right here, right now, you sit down with a fellow woman or a fellow mom and you talk about something that you're both experiencing that isn't always necessarily understood, especially by perhaps if you have a male partner. We were just discussing, I think it was 2 seasons ago. It may have been going into Christmas, but just how we were coming up with the Christmas gifts for our kids and how we were having to shop up a size because, our kids are getting a bit bigger. And these are things that our male partners just don't really think of. And that's nothing on our male partners. They are thinking of different things. It's not to say that my partner in particular doesn't think anything at all about our family and doesn't want to contribute or want to be prepared and want to do these things. It's just one of those responsibilities that tends to, not all of the time, but for the most part, tends to fall on the moms in the relationships. And it stems further than that. It starts to bleed into just even how much pressure there is on the modern day women to be all things at all times. And no matter what choice you make, it always seems like it's never the right choice. I mean, from someone else's point of view. And obviously that also stems into a much larger conversation that's not just for women, but in particular, what I'm talking about is as someone, for instance, that has chosen motherhood as part of my journey, I come up against comments and against opinions all of the time that my choice was wrong, that motherhood is selfish inherently now because of the state of the planet or the state of the world, or that being a mother in some way has stepped me back or diminished my value as a just person on the planet or a woman on the planet, and how it's reshaped or reframed how people can view me. However, I also know that there are similar, if not worse, pressures on women that choose not to have children, that you're going to regret it one day, and that they're also selfish, that they're not choosing to have children, that they're not devoting themselves to raising human beings. It's that idea that you have to work hard and you have to hustle and you have to be aggressive, which might go against the nature or go against your core, or even when it comes down to like your mental health or your physical health, as you start to feel yourself decline and deteriorate and start to feel burnt out and start to feel overworked and start to forget the parts of yourself that are creative, or forget the parts of yourself that feel soft and feel loving. I mean, again, I don't mean to make this like a gender norm thing, but it does kind of feel like unless you adapt your character and your personality, especially in the workplace, to that of the hustling, hardcore mentality of what seems to be traditionally more masculine, and I'm putting quotations if you're listening today around masculine, if you don't adapt to those qualities, then you are devalued in the workforce. Or if you choose to, let's say, be a stay-at-home mom, or you choose to do a creative field or a creative venture, or you choose to, you just choose a softer life path for whatever you consider your purpose and your work to be and your contribution to the planet to be. It just seems like it's devalued. So no matter what choices we make, it almost feels like it's never going to be good enough. It's never going to be the right choice. And what's worse is then it almost feels on top of that, at least I have felt this before, like, okay, I just won't make a choice. I'll be all of those things. I'll be soft and I'll be loving and I'll be a mom, but I'll also still be successful and I'll still be a hustler and I'll still work really hard. And I'll basically stretch myself across all of the different aspects and pressures that are expected or that have been presented as being admirable or being, I don't know, I guess cherished in a woman, and try and be all of those things at the same time. So that way I'm never doing the wrong thing. And that even stems into much deeper conversations too, of like the inner people pleaser and our need to just be accepted by everyone at all times, which is also toxic and unhealthy. You're not given a piece of paper when you're born, or you come into womanhood, or you become a mother that says you must do these things. That's the invisible part. It's the part where we start to assume these responsibilities. We start to assume these expectations based on the societal norms and based on the things that we are picking up from in our environment, in our culture, in our day-to-day through social media. It starts to weigh on us because then we become riddled with things like guilt, self-deprecation, because we don't feel like we're doing enough. We don't feel like we are good enough. If we drop the ball on one of the many pillars that we're all trying to balance, then we're a failure and we end up inherently burnt out, or we end up just not ourselves. We lose ourselves to feeling resentful. We lose ourselves to self-hatred. We lose ourselves to comparison, we lose our right and our ability to feel fulfilled by the things we are doing or the things we are naturally in terms of our personalities and our characters, because they are missing other facets of things that are, again, invisibly expected. If you're not doing it all and doing it all by yourself, then you're a failure. And it's just it's messed up, honestly. Again, I don't have the right answers. I'm not making this conversation perfect because I experience it too. And it's just an interesting thing. It's a hard thing to even discuss because it is so invisible, and not everybody feels it in the same way. Not everybody assumes the same responsibilities and expectations, because it's not just coming from society too. It also comes from the way we were raised, and perhaps the roles that our own parents or caregivers took on growing up and what we saw and what we rejected. It's multifaceted. There's a lot that feeds into it, but it's basically just this idea that there are these unseen stressors and these unseen expectations that we suddenly hold for ourselves. And if we don't question where they came from, or worse, if our society and our culture doesn't acknowledge it, but still expects it from women and moms, then we're doomed. We're doomed to feel burnt out. We're doomed to feel horrible. We're doomed to spend some of the best years of our lives just riddled with shame and guilt and not feeling good enough and feeling like failures, when in all reality, we're all probably doing great, because for the most part, we're all doing the very best we can. So here are just a few that I could think of what could be seen as the more unseen or invisible expectations of both women and mothers. The first is one of the most obvious, and it's domestic responsibilities. It's the idea of keeping your home or keeping your house or keeping your family if you choose that route in life. And that puts another pressure that we've kind of talked about already, but also the pressure to choose motherhood or to choose a family household. So whether or not you make that decision, it is a pressure. And I'm going to go into both, because even if you don't choose to have children, in traditional relationships where it's a man and a woman, for the most part, and there actually have been studies on this, because I wanted to look it up to make sure that I wasn't going to say anything that I'm just assuming to be true. But it is actually true that even if in a heterosexual relationship with dual income, so both of them are bringing in an income to the home of either 50-50 and sometimes even more on behalf of the woman, that even still the women tend to take on more of the domestic responsibilities of the home. And that goes further, because if you do decide to have children or add a family into that mix, then even more responsibilities inherently tend to fall or be scooped up by the woman. And I am so guilty of this. Like, I know that I do this. I know that if you were to put on paper what both me and my partner do in terms of our family and in terms of keeping our home, I know I take on more. It's hard to quantify, because obviously there are certain tasks that take a longer period of time, certain projects, like he's renovating our house, he's building our greenhouse. Those are huge projects. Those take a lot of time and energy. But so does the mundane day-to-day keeping of a home. So does keeping the kitchen clean every single day, keeping the bathrooms clean every week, making sure the laundry gets done. And my partner does do these things, but it's not in a routine manner as much as it is for me. Like, I have to create a routine out of those things. And that's also just partly personal preference, because it drives me insane to live in a home that feels unkept. It drives me insane to not have clean clothes, obviously, especially for my son. I don't want my son to go days without, something fresh to wear or good food in the fridge. So I do the meal planning, I do the meal prepping, I do the groceries. He might do the pickups, but I'm doing the planning of the meals and the picking of the groceries and the making of the grocery orders. And usually, for the most part, the cooking, which again, I chose to take that on. I straight up, when my partner and I decided to live together, said, I will happily do the cooking. I will happily cook for us. I will happily cook for our family, because I enjoy doing that. But just because you enjoy doing something doesn't mean that it doesn't come with its own weight and pressure and energy and time and, that load, because then there are certain days where maybe I don't feel like it. And again, of course, I hope I don't have to keep disclaiming myself throughout this entire video that this isn't a shot at male partners. This isn't a shot at husbands. This is not a shot at anybody, because obviously in my relationship, if I were to say, I don't feel like making dinner tonight, my partner would be easy to just be like, yeah, it's okay. He very likely, for the most part, won't feel like making it either. The difference is the like guilt. He won't feel bad or guilty about being like, yeah, babe, you don't have to make dinner. I'll just go pick us up something. Like, why does that make me feel bad? Why does that make me feel guilty? Why does that make me feel like I'm failing my family or making a bad choice by saying, I don't feel like making dinner. I don't have the energy today. But for him, it's like, it's honestly admirable. It's so nonchalant for him to just be like, yeah, no worries. I'll go pick us up dinner. And there's no aspect of failure, guilt, or shame in it. It is wild. It is so curious to me. It's something that I definitely, over the next few years, I assume I'm going to be picking apart mentally to try and understand on a deeper, more fundamental level. Why is that? Having children, we already talked about this, but it does go further. That invisible pressure goes a lot deeper and a lot further than just having children, because that, even just using the word just, it's not just, it is your body, your energy, it changes your brain, it changes your body chemistry, it changes your body, period, physically. It also depletes you. And I can say this from firsthand experience because I'm currently in my second pregnancy, and my blood work is truly showing that from my first pregnancy to my second pregnancy, I have been leached of certain vitamins and certain essential minerals and things that my body needs, because naturally a woman's body, when they're pregnant, the baby is going to take it from you. And if you don't have enough resources for both you and baby, your body will automatically deplenish its own to give to baby. And that's designed by nature. But like, again, that's something that it's not something a man will ever have to think about. Again, that goes further into if you do just decide to have children, whether or not you're going to breastfeed, there's another invisible pressure and another shame-riddled choice that if you choose not to, or for whatever reason you can't breastfeed, again, women are made to feel like failures. And that is only touching on one of the many parenting choices that you can choose, like what kind of foods you decide to feed your family. What kind of, do you follow a sleep schedule or do you not? Have only like Montessori wooden toys, or are you going to allow plastic toys in your home? Are you going to allow TV time or screen time or no? And what kind of education are you choosing for your children? Every single choice is a new pressure. And again, this isn't something that somebody looked at me and said, this is your weight to carry. But it is so interesting to me that my partner doesn't stress about these things at all. And if he does or ever did come up against somebody that didn't agree with like his or our choice as a parent, it would be so easy for him to brush it off. And that's not a him problem. That seems to be a me problem. But it's also not like, I don't want this to also come across as like I'm blaming the women or I'm blaming the mothers for taking on that weight, because we didn't actively choose to take it on either. This is where, again, I don't have the answer. It's just very interesting that I've seen that play out in real time. It's no sweat off his back, but it is mega sweat on my back to make those choices and be terrified of making the wrong one. Again, this is going to sound very gender norm, which I don't mean for it to, but we do have to also discuss how traditionally there is also this expectation for women to be the more emotional bearers of the family or of a partnership or even in a community. So what I mean by that is if someone is struggling, let's say, then it's normally expected, or it becomes unintentionally the responsibility of sometimes, not all times, the women or the moms to take on the emotional load of things, to take on making sure their loved ones are okay and opening themselves up to be the stand-in therapist or the one that helps others work through their emotions or have a safe space to unpack their emotions. We have created this new norm in living, and it's not the norm for everyone, but at least for what I've seen and known in my own society, circles, and culture, where women don't have the same groups that they used to in years prior. So as a woman sits in her family or sits in her community or circle and absorbs a lot of the emotions of others and creates that space for others to unpack, and then takes that on and works through those emotions with other people, who is helping her or is creating that safe space for her? And I think this, again, is another sore spot for me, because you would hope it would be the generation above. You would hope it would be her mother or her grandmother. But if you don't have those, And you are someone that like, I'm just going to stop speaking in other terms. I am somebody that I work really easily and intuitively with emotions. I actually quite enjoy, and I feel like I am living as part of my purpose when I can hold and be a safe space for somebody to unpack their emotions and help them work through it. That makes me feel, I don't know, it lights me up. It makes me feel like I'm contributing not only to someone's day, but also to the world in some way, because those things do come naturally to me. And I don't know, intuitively, I'm just naturally a little bit more softer natured and very empathetic. However, there have been too many times in my life where I feel like I don't know where to go with my own emotions. I don't know where to go with my own heaviness and who to take it to help me work through it. Or I feel guilty if I do, like the riddling guilt when you finally do unpack or you finally do let it out. And then it haunts you. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I put that on somebody. Or, oh my gosh, I've embarrassed myself because I was so emotional or I had a breakdown or whatever it is. It's wild. Like, why does that happen? Why does that exist? And we haven't even scratched the surface. I mean, there's the pressure for, if you are a working woman, which I mean, and again, thank the Lord that we are in a time and place where most of us are, if that's a choice that you want to make. But then there's this new pressure and this new, okay, where's your work-life balance and how much self-care are you doing? Again, this can branch into so many different topics because it gets into the unseen and unspoken of pressures of like consumerism, where self-care is now not just taking care of yourself. Self-care has become a profitable trend. It's become something where you need all of these products and you need to do all of these routine appointments just to take care of yourself. It's a new financial pressure. It's a new, again, societal pressure because it's so normalized now that self-care has become doing all of these excess, very privileged things to just take care of yourself, when really, in all reality, the fundamental root or core of self-care is, what do you just need to take care of yourself? Like, are you just needing a really good nourishing meal right now? Are you needing, I don't know, some sleep, or just to journal, or have somebody to be like, how you feeling? Like, it's self-care should be free, but for the most part, it has become very trendy. It's become a very trendy topic, and then thus has turned into a point of profit for consumerism to now get the hooks into things like self-care, get the hooks even into things like work-life balance, because now there's all of these apps and there's all of these routines you can follow, and there's all of these books you should read to either expand your knowledge or develop yourself personally, or, you know, be all things at all times and evolve as a person. And that is another pressure that, again, doesn't just belong to women or mothers, but it is one that I'm speaking of for women and mothers today, because there is also this pressure to constantly be doing better, be bettering yourself, be balancing better all of the aspects of your life, all of the different facets of who you are. The invisible pressure to be perfect. And this is where, again, it gets deep. It gets a little heavy, where we are still, at least I feel we are still under the male gaze. I still hold myself up at times under the male gaze in terms of wanting to stay youthful and beautiful. I'm a lot more graceful with myself. And I do feel like with each year that I get older, I'm letting go of that grip a little bit more. I'm becoming a bit more graceful with aging and becoming a lot more understanding of my value as a person, as a human being, and how that grows as I evolve and as I grow wiser and as I get older. But there is that invisible pressure too for women to stay young and to stay youthful and to stay beautiful. Your body should look a certain way and it should follow certain trends, and your face should look a certain way, and it also shouldn't change too much, but it also should fit this criteria of what is considered to be beautiful right now. And it does feel, at least for me, like it comes a lot still from that male gaze, a lot from staying attractive to men and like what men would consider to be hot, sexy, and beautiful. And it's stolen. Maybe, again, I don't know, maybe I'm going to sound dramatic here, but I feel like I get a little angry even thinking about it. Like, it feels like it has stolen the fundamental right for us to feel beautiful. I don't feel like I'm qualified to talk about this because it is something I struggle with myself, but it even steals the fundamental right to feel sexy. It makes me uncomfortable to even say that, but you are in your right as a human being allowed to feel sexual. You're allowed to feel sexy. I don't naturally feel like a sexy person by society's standards. However, again, as I've gotten older, as I've embraced more of my own womanhood, I have come to understand the things that do make me feel sexy that might not be what is, I guess, more expected, what we see out in social media or in society. You're not considered to be sexy, and so you don't feel sexy because you don't fit certain standards or because you don't fit certain trends or certain norms. It's crazy because it's also it's very surface level, these things that we're even speaking of. And it starts to, again, get very complicated and get very messy when it starts to bleed into things like personal development. And you take somebody that wants to feel more confident in themselves, that wants to feel more beautiful, that wants to feel more sexy even, and they're online and they stumble across a video of like how to embrace your feminine power, which I'm not saying that that's a bad video to make or a bad video to watch, but it creates this susceptibility, this idea that you are not good enough, that you are broken or bad in some way, or that there are things you need to work on and change within yourself or about yourself or the way you look in order to feel a certain way. Like that, again, when you say it out loud, that sounds so messed up because it is messed up. That we would have to physically change something in order to feel something that should be inherently a right. It's not something that you have to earn. It's not something that you have to fit into. That goes for feeling beautiful. Like if you are, it's so eye of the beholder, I guess is what I'm getting at here, because beauty really is in the eye of the beholder. And what one person might deem as sexy is not what someone else will. And what one person might deem as beautiful is not what someone else will. The invisible pressure of it is where we start to see things like trends and things like expectations and norms and criteria put into place that become popularized and become almost like infiltrated in everything we see and consume. And that creates that invisible pressure because it is rewiring the things we expect, not just from society, but also then from ourselves. And it changes the perspective that we're looking at ourselves and other women and other mothers and the world at large. It changes that lens. And when it changes the lens, we stop, especially if we haven't been questioning it, we stop actually knowing what we consider to be beautiful, what we consider to be sexy, or what we consider to be successful or joyous or beautiful or, peaceful, whatever it is, because it's not actually coming from our own inherent beliefs. It's coming from a very subconscious absorption of what we chronically are seeing and what we chronically are consuming. And also what we're chronically seeing be celebrated and what we're seeing be popularized, what we're seeing be sought after. I'm jumping in here with a little editor's note because this made me think and want to give a little hat tilt to the moms out there that are listening, because on top of that, there is a pressure if you do decide to have children and you bear children in your body, all of this pressure suddenly right after you have that baby to snap back to normal, not just physically, but also mentally. During your pregnancy, you want to try and stay beautiful still. You still want to try and stay small. You want people to tell you that you barely even look pregnant while you're growing a whole human. And then once that baby is born, it's like how to snap back, how to get back into shape. Your hormones change so much. Everything changes so much. Your life, your sleep, even this new center that we get surrounded by with our children. And yet there's still that invisible pressure in the back of our minds to still stay who we were before, still stay or keep that part of ourselves that was the maiden, that was the woman that, felt good and sexy enough to become pregnant in the first place. I'm not saying this perfectly, but it's another pressure that I see you and I hear you if you felt it, because I have felt it too. So I fully thought I was going to be able to host this entire conversation by this point. I've been speaking for like 40 minutes and I have to go pick up my son right now. So I'm going to pause here and you know what, let's take a quick break for today's sponsor, and then I'll jump back in probably either later tonight or tomorrow with the rest of this conversation, because I'm not done yet. I thought I would be done. I was just going to speak my points and leave. But as I've opened up the conversation, things are just now, I'm heated. There are more things I want to say, things we haven't even touched on yet. So I will be right back. My closet used to be entirely chaotic, crammed with a bunch of clothes, but still feeling like I had nothing to wear. I finally recently went through it, cleared out all the stuff I no longer wear, cleared out all the stuff that I no longer fit in. And I've been so intentional about the pieces that I have been putting back into my closet. I want them to be pieces I can wear for a long time, that are going to last me a long time, and that don't necessarily go out of style. And the game changer to doing that, being able to upgrade to higher quality, affordable pieces, is Quince. Now my wardrobe is growing with more luxury essentials that transition from one season or one occasion to the next, and I can do so staying on budget. Quince offers things like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters for $50, organic cotton sweaters, washable silk tops, and timeless 14-karat gold jewelry. And the best part is that all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. Through partnering directly with the top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes all of the savings on to us, the customers. And Quince only works with factories that are safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes, and that is huge for me too. So I just recently started getting back into jewelry, and in particular earrings, and they have some of the cutest earrings. Indulge in some affordable luxury. Head to quince.com/talk for free shipping on your order, and you can get 365-day returns. That is QUINCE.com/TALK to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Again, that's quince.com/talk. So when I first started back on social media over 10 years ago now, which is a crazy thought, having an online store was the furthest thing from my mind. I didn't even think it would be possible. But then over the years, I have dabbled into so many different ventures online, and Shopify has been there with me every single step of the way. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every single stage of your business. You could be selling things like scented soaps, or maybe some garden accessories, or mugs, or books, journals, you name it. Shopify can help you sell everywhere, from their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system. Wherever, whatever you're selling, Shopify has got you covered. I'm actually right now working on the back end of my own Shopify site that used to be called All Things Co's, and right now I'm focused solely on the blog aspect of it because I want to relaunch my website again, and I couldn't imagine doing it on any other platform but Shopify. That's where I'll be selling my books again. That's where I plan on selling some future projects that I'll be working on. And it's been really cool to have Shopify there with me for all of these steps along the way, from when I used to sell mugs and sweaters to now selling things like books and possibly journals. Right now, you can sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/KC Talk. That's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/KC Talk now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. One more time, that is shopify.com/KC Talk. All right, I am back, and I don't fully remember exactly where I left things off, but I think a good place to jump back in would be to talk about the pressures that can be placed on usually women and especially mothers, that you have to be both contributing to the household. In fact, there's currently a cost of living crisis where it's almost impossible not to have a double income household. I know for me, I personally wouldn't feel comfortable letting go of my own source of income. I mean, and again, that can also be seen as one of the invisible pressures of women, is that it's interesting when you start a family, how it's almost just assumed that the mom is going to be the one that would let go of her job if one of the parents would. And again, that just comes from traditional roles, right? But on top of that, that also places a new pressure, a new invisible fear, perhaps even, that for me, I know I would never let go of my own income or my own source of income for obviously passion and creative purposes, but it goes further than that. What if things don't work out between my fiance and I? Heaven forbid. And then I have gone years without working, and I suddenly have to now find my own source of income if, let's say, years down the road, him and I decide to split. Like, that, again, would put me in a bad or worse off situation. But that's not even possible. I mean, again, entirely different topic, because the cost of living in today's world right now doesn't even really give the proper comfort, I guess would be the right way to say it, to come down to a one income household. I wouldn't want to put that pressure on my fiance, but also I love what I do. And then that comes with a new pressure now, because then as a mom, and also just in general as a woman, there is this pressure to contribute to the household while also still doing most of the managing of the household. And that doesn't need to necessarily be just motherly tasks, although a lot of the times it is, managing things like the gifts for all of the holidays, or staying in coordination with families, or planning special events, or keeping a family calendar. Again, we've talked about some of these things, but even if you don't have kids, a lot of the times there is, again, a societal pressure, a societal norm that could go generations back, and again, can be seen as a traditional norm for women, because when we go back to our ancestors, when the men were out hunting, the women were left in the village to gather and to stay in communication and to build and keep relations in the tribes and relations within the groups and the communities. So when you look at that now through the lens of modern time, it is, again, unspoken of, but usually expected of the woman in a traditional relationship to keep those lines of communication open with extended family, extended friends, planning events, and keeping the social life of the family or the social life of the relationship as a nuclear unit. And I know I've talked about this already, but I do want to just really hone in for a little bit on this idea of even being the perfect mom or the perfect parent. How can you do it all? How can you balance it all? How can you be the perfect mom and make sure that you're there and doing all the right things and being that all-encompassing person to the human that you brought to earth, while also still remaining yourself, while also still keeping your friendships and keeping your social life and keeping your passions, keeping your work-life balance if you do still have a job or if you do still contribute to the household income. It has been a real struggle for me, I think, since stepping into motherhood to find that balance. And so I've really just tried to take grace into the idea that balance looks different and different things get prioritized in different chapters of our lives. And so, yes, right now my focus is more so on being a mom, and it sucks because it means I don't get to socialize as much as I used to. I don't see my friends as much as I would love to. And it's bittersweet. It's a wound. It feels uncomfortable because change, even though it can be beautiful and even though it can be transformative and everything you wanted, like I always wanted to be a mom, there were unforeseen changes that would come with that. And that's, again, not to say that things haven't changed for my partner, but I don't think his friendships have changed as much as mine have since becoming parents. I don't feel like his social life has changed as much as mine has since becoming parents. I think it's a lot easier because I'm naturally, again, just primary parent. Like I have been since my son's birth. And that's partly because I take on a lot of the responsibility, but also partly because I was breastfeeding for a very long time. So being a primary parent was almost like not a choice at some point. When I was the main source of nutrition for my child, and will be with my second, at least I hope, that just came naturally, that I was the primary parent. I couldn't be away from my child for very long, nor did I really want to. But again, then that comes with a new pressure where I was still trying to manage and keep a lot of the old aspects of my life and of myself, while also not being able to be away from my baby for more than a few hours, sometimes not even that. So again, a new pressure that my partner would never have to think of. He would be able to go off and do things. He was able to go and see friends or go to events or go do trips and things. He just got back from a bachelor party that was like a couple nights long. And I can't even think about my bachelorette a year and a half from now. It would be like a year and a bit from now. Knowing my second baby will be just over a year or roughly around a year at that point. And even still, like I'm stressing about that now. And that's just not something he's going to have to think about. There's so much I could still speak of. And I'm not entirely fresh on what I even spoke of yesterday. So I don't want to reiterate myself too much. And hopefully if I do, I can edit that down just a bit. But I'm just going to speak off the cuff here of just the invisible pressures that I'm feeling. And then let me know if you're listening or watching today, what invisible pressures you feel as a woman and as a mom. I think the biggest one for me is all of the aspects and the pillars of life that we've talked about today, and keeping tabs on all of them. Trying to strike that life balance has been very interesting. I love a good challenge, so I try to rise to the occasion. But I mean, many weeks I'm left feeling defeated in one area of my life or another, whether it is, and for the most part, this is the one that sucks, and it's probably one of the more painful ones, but it always seems to be the self-care that's put last on the list, which is interesting because if you were to ask me, or if someone were to come to me and ask for advice, I would tell them that you would have to take care of yourself first, because if you're not taking care of yourself, then how are you expected to be able to show up in all of these other areas of life? And yet in practice, I fully understand why a lot of us put self-care last on the list when it comes to trying to do all of the other things that we feel we have to, all the other responsibilities that we've taken on in life, and all of the other pressures that we're trying to fulfill and that we feel and that we're trying to ease. So what ends up happening is that the easiest pressure to let go of or to ignore is the pressure to take care of ourselves. Because if we're letting ourselves down, then the only person that we have to feel bad or worry about, like being upset, is ourselves. And then we just think, well, we'll manage. It bleeds into the other pillars we've talked about, because for me, I've felt that when I've put my self-care last, I start to build up this anxiety and this worry. Well, there was a good chunk of time where I was just so tired and so burnt out that I wasn't taking off my makeup at the end of the day. And that might not sound like such a big thing, but the anxiety that started to build in my mind is like, well, now I'm 30 and I can't get away with that like I used to in my 20s. And that's going to start to affect my skin. And then I'm going to start to age faster. Then I'm going to start to look worse. And if I don't look desirable, will my partner still want to be with me? Will my partner still desire me? Will I still... even just as silly as this sounds, but it is very, I'm just going to be very real. Like even just in filming as much content as I do of my life and of myself and of my face, it's embarrassing when I go through phases where I'm editing content and I'm like, gosh, I feel like I look so rough right now. And it's mostly because the self-care went last on the list. And, I'm reading this book right now. It's called Mama Rising. And there's this beautiful chapter that is specifically more so about birth, but I want to reframe it in all of the aspects that we've talked about right now, where she was doing this meditation where she said to it, like, picture your birthing experience and picture all of the women that have given birth before you and all of the generations, and imagine all of them being in the room, all of their energy being in the room, all of their spirit being in the room as a form of support for the mom, as a form of support for you. I want to take that and expand it a little bit, because imagine as we're all facing these invisible pressures every day and we're all trying to stretch ourselves so thin and fill up all of these different cups and give so much of ourselves away. Imagine if every single woman that is feeling that right now, that is facing all of these invisible pressures right now, facing all of these what feel like impossible decisions every day, and life decisions and life paths, and all of the generations before us and all of the women that are facing it now could come together and, in a sense, just even if we don't have the answers, just to say, like, I see you, I feel it too. And you're doing an amazing job. All that you are is more than enough, and you deserve to feel good. I've spoken about this multiple times, but I feel like it's a good note to possibly close down our talk today, is that my biggest fear is to get to the end of my life and think back from that perspective and from that wisdom and realize, oh my God, I wasted so much time worrying about things that I'll never get that time back. I'll never get that energy back. And so when I go to that place in my mind, I imagine myself in my 80s and my 90s, and I imagine giving her this day back and giving her this life chapter back and this age back and this energy, this body, this, all of it, all of what I have right now back to myself at that age. I wonder through her perspective what things I would still worry about, what things I still would stress about, what pressures I would still give into. And it's not always perfect because yes, you can do that mentally and then you might catch yourself right back into all of the responsibilities of the day. Like I'm minutes away from my son and my fiance coming home, and I'm going to jump right into my evening routine and making dinner and doing my house chores of the night and having maybe, if my son goes to bed on time, maybe an hour to myself where, and to be honest, I'm behind on work right now. So I'm thinking it would be the smartest decision to edit tonight instead of using my free time to relax. However, on top of that, I am very sleep deprived. I'm struggling with pregnancy insomnia. My sleep has not been great. There are so many things that I could do. Again, I could take that shortcut. I could say, hey, babe, pick up takeout. It's going to make me feel like crap. I already picked up all of these groceries, did all of this meal planning for the week. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, do you see how I'm spiraling a little bit here on purpose, but just to show that that pressure is so real. And it's a privilege to feel the pressures that I'm feeling. And I'm aware of that. And I want to make that known that there are women and there are mothers on the other side of the planet from me right now that are facing much worse. And actually, now that I've said that, it makes me want to just take back everything I've said today, because it's not that it's irrelevant and it's not that it's not valid, but it is that in going to our older age or in going to some of the more horrific struggles that women and mothers are facing, you do realize that the pressures then look a little bit more like privileges. Like I have the privilege, I have been given the gift of being able to feed my family tonight. I've been given the gift to be able to cuddle my child to sleep. I'm too pregnant and emotional for this, but I've been given the gift of time, and I've been given the gift of being who I am. And so have you, if you're listening to this right now. And I don't want any of us to get to the end of our lives and feel like we missed out on it all because we were trying so hard to be everything to everyone else. Like, there is a fierceness within all of us that we are allowed to claim, even if it's been dampered or been burnt out for a long time or has been feeling that way for a long time. You can put your foot down. You can say no. You can reprioritize. You can put up boundaries. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take reaffirmation of those boundaries and of those no's. And honestly, it's going to take strategy. It's going to take being really, really strategic and wise with your time and your energy. And I think the only way to best do that is to really, truly know what you prioritize most and to give yourself grace when other things pop up. Like, I know that again, if you were to ask me flat out, I would straight up tell you self-care is important, but also how I look and the way that society values the way that I look isn't as important to me as the way that I love my children or the way that I take care of my health or the ways that I show up for my other responsibilities or the ways that I create. And yet, you can scroll on social media and suddenly you just feel like crap because someone's so beautiful or someone seems to have it all put together. Someone is baking sourdough from scratch and doing the entire mom thing from scratch while also working and having 5 kids or 6 kids. It's just like, it's grace. I'm going to take one more thing from the Mama Rising book that I'm reading right now, but it's grit and it's grace. Those are the 2 ingredients, grit and grace. Grit is that fire, that fierceness that you can reignite, that shows you what you're capable of. But the grace is what comes in and stops you from pushing too far into the grit to the point that you do burn out. It's giving yourself grace to feel the way you feel, cry it out, let it out, feel the complexity and the nuance of all of these pressures, but also all of the privileges of these being our pressures, and move forward with a sense of grace and owning your grit. We're all just doing the best you can. Like I said, I don't have all the answers for this chat. I love my fiance dearly. I know that there are things that he contributes to our household. He contributes to the things that get done for our family and our home, and also just for me as his partner that I really value. I do know that if you were to put it down on paper and categorize it, and you look at things like home, it would look like I do a lot more. But if you were to look at things like renovations or house projects or the advancement upon our house, it would look like he does a lot more. If you were to look at what gets done for our boys and or even just right now being pregnant, it would look like I do a lot more. But if you were to look at what our day-to-day tasks are, how physically demanding what we do every day is, his would look like a lot more. So again, it is nuanced. I don't have the answers, but I just feel the pressures. And I know others out there listening feel it too. And I'm sure there are people talking about it that probably do have some answers. I have a couple books I haven't read yet, but I will say Mama Rising for any moms listening today. I'm about a third of the way through the book. Really great book. Very empowering, very inspiring, very real. And another book that I have that's on my TBR list that I haven't read yet, but I actually started this with a quote from, is Invisible Women. And that is a book more about like women in society and in the workplace and how everything is kind of catered towards the man. And so we show up in these roles, but we're invisible. We're not really taken into account. Maybe it won't be my last chat on this just because I don't feel like I've really rounded it up quite nicely, but that's because I'm still feeling it. I'm still in it. I'm still learning. And I would love to hear any thoughts, any books you've read on the topic, any podcasts, anyone that you listen to that talks about these things, that opens up the space for these invisible pressures and these invisible expectations of women and mothers, and share all of those resources down below. We can make this like a really great spot that you can find further branches to jump to if this topic resonated with you today. I'm definitely interested in that as well. And yeah, without further ado, I'm just going to close it out here because I don't think that there's a better way for me to end this. And I don't think that there's much more I could say. Thank you for creating this space that does feel like it's safe and graceful enough that I can show up sometimes without the answers and show up and maybe not say everything perfectly or the right way, but just explain my own experience and explain what I've been hearing and seeing and understand as far as my own knowledge goes. I really do hope that anyone listening today, even just one person listening today, feels seen and heard. And with that, I will chat with you guys all in my next coffee talk. I'll see you guys all next week. Bye, everyone.